Watch how growing frustration over Britain's defence strategy erupts in the House of Lords as peers accuse Keir Starmer of lacking leadership at a critical moment for national security. With defence reviews delayed yet again, concerns are mounting. Before we continue, hit like and subscribe to Britain Daily for more explosive political coverage.
My Lords, the government has been under sustained attack over many months for inadequacy of defence spend, opacity as to what it's going to do about it, and lethargy engulfing its defence investment plan. When the most acerbic criticism comes from a political friend and the government's defence advisor, that is painful, but it is also a piercing alarm klaxon. Help is needed now. May I ask the noble Lord the Minister, whom I hold in respect and affection, two questions. Even if the government doesn't accept the Chega's deal is dead, although everyone else does, why not redirect now the identified and assigned Chega's payments to the MOD? That money is not going to Mauritius anytime soon. And as the MOD struggles to fill a current £3.5 billion black hole, it must ruthlessly prioritise. So how about, above all else, urgently getting warships out of maintenance?
First of all, can I thank the Noble Baroness for her question? Just to, on the Chagos deal, look, the direct answer to that is that fairly obviously priorities across government are always being assessed and reassessed as policy develops or changes, but predicting that is clearly very difficult. So I can't give a direct answer to what the Noble Baroness has asked, as I expect she thought I wouldn't be able to do. But in terms of warship maintenance, I know the First Sea Lord is working extremely hard to improve the maintenance of warships to see how we can get them all ready to be operational much more quickly. But it's not just with warships, it's across the whole of the Navy, and he's working hardest, the Noble Baroness knows, with respect to a hybrid Navy, and he's also working extremely hard to improve submarine availability as well.
Is the delay in the defence investment plan partly due to the government having to make cuts to existing programmes in order to provide programmes that meet new and increasing new challenges? And how does that sit with the claim to be funding increased defence spending? And secondly, given that the SDR call for a whole-of-society approach to defence and security, when will the government seek to engage the public and all political parties in a debate on what are the threats we're facing, how they're escalating, and how we need to respond? Because at the moment, the public are not so convinced that increased defence spending is justified. Most of us know it is, but we need to ensure the public are carried with it. Will the government take such an initiative?
Yeah. Well, can I say to the Noble Lord, there's a debate on Monday about defence resilience in the Grand Committee, so we can start the conversation there as one part of that. But of course, there's a broader debate that the broader conversation that Noble Lord is referring to, and we're working hard to deliver that as well. On defence spending, let me just say there's a debate about spending. I accept that, but let me just say in 2024-25, the total deal was 60.2 billion. In 28-29, it will be 73.5 under current plans. That's a 13.5 billion increase per year for that in that final year. So that is an increase. In terms of the SDR, he will know, notwithstanding the debate that's going on around that, the government isn't waiting for the publication of the SDR. There are significant investments being made already. Leonardo's was announced recently in terms of Yeovil around helicopters. Just yesterday, again, talking about helicopters, with Boeing UK, there was nearly £900 million announced for Chinook and Apache maintenance. There's huge investment going into shipbuilding in Scotland, which is immense for Scotland and something of which we can all be pleased. The nuclear deterrent is being renewed. We've ordered 12 Type 35 F-35s. So all of those sorts of things are important. We're not waiting for the SDR, we're investing already. The debate, no doubt, will continue about the total amount, but it's wrong to say that we're not investing anything.
I offer my sympathies to the Noble Lord the Minister for being put up yet once again to defend the indefensible. Would he agree that the people of this country have a right to expect their leaders to, well, lead? The need is not in doubt. The Prime Minister goes to places like Munich and gives very eloquent speeches setting out the urgency of the requirement. But back here, at home, the issue apparently remains on his desk, where I assume it's been sitting for months now. Could he take the message back to his colleagues, a message with which I know he agrees, although he couldn't say so? The time for leadership is not now, it's long past. We need to get on with this. The situation is too urgent and too dangerous to permit a further delay.
Yeah. The DIP is being finalised, and the Noble and Gallant Lord, as he said, the DIP is on the Prime Minister's desk, as he said recently at the Liaison Committee, and being considered. The only point I would make to the noble and gallant Lord is the point I made to the noble Lord and often make to the noble Baroness. I accept the debate and discussion that's going on about the totality of the amount that should or shouldn't be spent within the total that the government has available. The only point I'm making is that alongside that discussion, alongside that debate, significant change is happening and significant investment is being made. The defence budget is rising. I know it's not rising in the way that the noble and gallant Lord would wish it to. But as I said to the noble Lord, without repeating it to save time for other noble Lords to ask questions, there is significant investment going into defence industry and defence capabilities across our nation, of which the British public can be proud.
My Lord, in the current appropriate balance between welfare and defence spending, allegations have been made about the lack of defence expertise in the Treasury. Is this justified?
Well, we speak to the Treasury all the time, so hopefully the Treasury will understand from us what the points we're making about defence and the importance of it. I know the Treasury and the Prime Minister understand that. The debate continues about the totality of the spending that needs to be allocated to defence, but those discussions with Treasury, the Prime Minister and others across government will continue.
My Lord, may I say that all governments of all parties have taken advantage of the peace.
Conservatives next.
I declare an interest as a serving Army Reserve officer, and may I start by thanking the noble Lord the Minister for giving up his valuable time yesterday to meet senior Army leaders from the Directorate of Personnel. Reservists are the first echelon. The regular forces are now so small that reservists are no longer second echelon, but on essentially a 0 hours contract, our budgets are usually the first to be cut. So what assurances can the noble Lord the Minister give the House that reserve budgets will be protected in the forthcoming dip?
I say both to the noble Lord and to the noble Lord Lancaster that the reserves are an essential part of the defence of our nation. They are going to be an increasing part of the defence of our nation, and as such they deserve a budget which matches that responsibility that they're going to be given.
Does my noble friend agree?
My Lords, on Tuesday, my noble friend the Minister called on all sides of the House to come together to deal with the threats we face. Yet my noble friend Lord Robertson this week called out the lack of engagement of the Liberal Democrats and Reform, who did not respond to his offer, at least until this week, to brief them on the Strategic Defence Review. And the Green Party are at best, if I'm being charitable, ambivalent about NATO. What needs to be done now to bring all sides together in the face of the toughest compounding circumstances in decades? From recent conversations, it is apparent that my noble lords on all sides care and think deeply about this issue.
The point I was trying to make on Tuesday, and I'm happy to reiterate, is that the threat that we face needs the country to respond as a whole. And the government's responsibility, working with others, is to ensure that the population understands that threat and the increasing nature of that threat. I think that in response to that, we can expect everyone to come together as our country always does.
My Lord, can I simply say from the Democrat benches that I've spoken to George Robertson, I can't think how many times in the last few months. We are fully engaged, as the Minister knows well, with this debate. We are anxious that the defence review should be implemented. We regret that there has not been the national conversation led by the Prime Minister, which we need, and the idea that we're somehow not engaged at all with this is, to say the least, a little over the top.
On the main point that the noble Lord is making around the national conversation, as I've said to him and said in this House on a number of occasions, that national conversation needs to begin as soon as possible, and plans are underway with respect to that. It is essential that it happens, and we need to ensure that the British public understand the very real change in circumstances that they face now compared to just a few years ago.
My Lords, does the Minister agree that as important as the level of expenditure is the effectiveness of that expenditure? And can he tell the House what the MOD is doing to improve the efficiency of defence spending?
The MOD, as the noble Lord probably will know, is that there's been a defence reform programme which has led to the establishment of a National Armaments Directorate and a new National Armaments Director. And certainly at the top of his agenda is the whole business of ensuring more effective procurement and better value for money, all of those sorts of things that you would assume are essential. But it's not only effective procurement. The other challenge for us and for all of us as a nation, and indeed our friends and allies, is what is the appropriate equipment to buy with the changed nature of warfare at the current time. And the lesson from Ukraine is clearly air defence, clearly new technology and drones. And it's how we ensure the balance between what you might call traditional capability, which of course is still essential, and the new technologies which are emerging. So that's also a challenge, as well as the nature of the procurement itself.
Let's watch this explosive clip. Here is the title: Lords lay into Starmer's lack of leadership as critical strategic defence review delayed again. What a remarkable and deeply revealing exchange in the House of Lords. At the heart of this debate was a simple but powerful question. When national security is at stake, can Britain afford delay? Peers from across the political spectrum voiced growing concern that the government's strategic defence review remains stuck in limbo while global threats continue to escalate. For many viewers, this debate goes beyond Westminster politics. It touches on something fundamental: the safety and security of the country. Families want to know that Britain is prepared, that its armed forces have the resources they need, and that leaders are acting with urgency when the world becomes more dangerous. Critics argued that while ministers speak about the importance of defence, crucial decisions remain unresolved. Questions were raised about military readiness, warship maintenance, reserve forces, procurement efficiency, and whether the government is moving quickly enough to meet emerging threats. Perhaps the most striking moment came when peers accused the Prime Minister of showing a lack of leadership on an issue they described as too urgent to delay any longer. Their message was clear: Britain faces serious challenges and leadership requires action, not hesitation. Supporters of the government pointed to increased defence spending and ongoing investments, but the debate highlighted a growing sense of impatience within Parliament. Now, we want to hear from you. Do you think the government is moving fast enough on defence, or are these delays putting Britain at risk? If you enjoyed this coverage, make sure to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Britain Daily for more explosive political coverage and the latest debates from Parliament.